3 girls walked in and they asked essentially, pretty much straight up, hey, do you want to be in the porn industry?
Are you like in danger with like? This is a very, very wealthy industry, and you were one of the biggest people in this industry, and now you're speaking against it. Like, are you safe?
And in 2012, I was named Performer of the Year, which means, that industry and the people associated voted that I was, the quote-unquote MVP. And when I won the award, I thought it was going to make me feel like I was somebody. And then instead, it made me feel like I was nobody.
Y'all, this is a heavier episode.
Yeah.
It's real. I mean, this is real. And, like, nobody wants to
They're
talk
probably
about
going to
it.
demonetize this, too.
All right, happy and healthy listeners, we are so excited about today's guest. I'm back here again with my husband, and we have an amazing guest. We have Josh Broome. Welcome to the podcast.
What's up, Josh?
So glad to be here.
You're a good looking dude.
Hey,
you know that.
Thank you.
Handsome.
Wow.
We need his teeth whitener.
Hype me up.
Come
Do
on.
you whiten your teeth?
I do a little bit of peroxide and baking soda once a week.
We need to get on that. They're like white. I drink too much coffee.
White.
I drink Diet Coke as well.
Okay.
Do you use some type of skincare too?
Oh yeah. Well, philosophy everything.
Can you send that to my husband because I've tried getting him on it. It's just not
Philosophy
happening.
everything for us.
Philosophy.
That's the
Josh, I'll be honest with you. I'm a believer that skincare, it's like a scam. There's like a conspiracy around like skincare.
Right.
I don't believe in it.
Okay.
So once you start using it, you always have to use it.
Can't go back.
Well,
It's true.
yeah.
So, Josh, we brought you on the podcast because you have an incredible testimony and you've had a transformation. You've been on a lot of podcasts. I mean, I think the first time I heard you was on Becoming Something with JP. We love JP, big advocates for JP, right? He's the best.
He's okay.
Yeah.
He's okay.
Caleb has beef with
Me
him.
and JP got beef right
No,
now.
I'm kidding. They really don't. Don't start rumors, guys. But yeah, we're really excited to hear your story because you were an ex-porn star.
Yeah.
And God radically took a hold of your life. So I would love for you just to share that story to our listeners really fast.
Absolutely. So I think the uniqueness of my story starts with my childhood because I think pornography in itself, it is the byproduct of a wound, and we try to medicate that wound with something, and that something becomes something that we lean on. And so for me, it starts me growing up in a small town without a dad. And that, unfortunately, is a normative thing in Western culture. But what was unique about my upbringing was that my dad that I didn't have in my life was down the street. And I lived in a town small enough where I literally saw my dad, and my mom gets pregnant with me when she's 15, has me at 16, and then he gets married, right after high school. So like literally, I'm seeing him raise another family, and my family was I've seen poverty, so I don't want to say like we were struggling, but they most certainly had a different and better life than we did. And so I saw my dad and his new family and new kids having the life that I didn't have, and they had access to the thing that I wanted and needed. So as I grew up, that was something that caused confusion, and then later it caused frustration. And I thought, well, if I become enough, I'll feel like I'm enough. And I thought, if I make the best grades, become the best athlete, do the thing, I would, change the way that I saw myself and change the way that I felt about myself.
Wow.
And it didn't work, so many people think, if I had the right car, the right job, the right title, the right relationship, the problems in my life will, mysteriously just go away, but often they become worse. Yeah. And that's what I found to be true in my life, where go to college, join the frat, do all the stuff, played college basketball for a season, did all this stuff, dropped out, moved to Hollywood because I started modeling and acting around 13.
Wow.
And then, so I thought, okay.
What was your first break?
So, it was like an Ed Hardy, Ed Hardy back in the day. Yeah. So
what's Ed Hardy?
Ed Hardy, it's like a modern version of it's like
rock revival.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like True Religion vibes.
Sure.
Like
okay.
Something like stuff like that. but yeah, so did like eyewear, clothes for them, stuff like that, and then I did a ton of runway stuff, so like Calvin Klein, like so on and so on. But I was doing that, and then I thought, well, if I drop out of college and move to in closer proximity to the industry I want to be in, then that would equate to success for me. And I got an agent out there, and I was doing okay, but it doesn't matter if you make $10 million. If you spend 11, then you need more money. So I got a job at a like restaurant slash bar to kind of just make more money so that I can keep doing the things that I was doing. And in that bar, 3 girls walked in and they asked essentially, pretty much straight up, "Hey, do you want to be in the porn industry?" And I was like, well, never thought about it. But at the same time, I saw pornography for the first time when I was 13. And average age of exposure, 3 years ago was 11. It's around 8 years old now. And for me, not having a mom and dad in a home, or really anyone speaking to my life, I didn't have a representation of what was a healthy dynamic between a husband and a wife, or what is adoration between a man and a woman. And that's why like Romans 12:2 is so important. It's like you're either being conformed by the world or you're being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And if you don't know what is God's good, pleasing, and perfect will, the world is going to tell you what you should do. And I believed I could find love if I did the things that I saw. And so lived a very promiscuous life up to that point. And then, so when someone invited me into that, I thought, okay, this is not that different than how I'm living. How big of a deal could it be? And I do one film and my life just falls apart because I did it. And, this is 2006 when I did the first film, but like it goes viral. And all of a sudden, if you're familiar with a small town, it only takes one person to know one thing about your life for everyone to know everything about your life. So very quickly, everyone, including my family, finds out. And then the agent that was representing me found out, and she was like, "Hey, unfortunately, we can't represent you because your name's tied to this. I wish you the best of luck." So all of a sudden, I'm like, "Okay, what am I to do?"
Right.
And the porn agent that brought me into that first scene, he offered me a contract, and then I thought, well,
You dug your grave. You might as well.
yeah,
lay in it.
and it's so easy to believe that, where it's
Yeah.
like that's why compromise always leads to deeper compromise, because I thought, well, I did this thing, now I am this thing. That the difference between shame and guilt, where shame is I am my behavior, I am my mistake, in contrast to guilt, it's like I did something bad, I need to do something about it. But I thought, okay, this is just who I am, so now this is what I have to do. But the same mindset as the kid where I like, well, if I do enough and I obtain enough, I feel like I'm enough. And I thought, well, if I become the most successful person in that industry and I make the most money, then that would equate to happiness and satisfaction at the end of the day. And, I think it's a unique way to looking at it. But, Romans 2:4 talks about it's God's love, his patience, his kindness that leads us into repentance. And I think in a real way, God allowed me to experience everything that I thought would satisfy my soul to understand that it didn't.
Wow.
And, so I made millions of dollars, became the most successful person in that industry, won all the awards. And in 2012, I was named Performer of the Year, which means, that industry and the people associated voted that I was, the quote unquote MVP. And when I won the award, I thought it was going to make me feel like I was somebody. And then instead it made me feel like I was nobody, and it didn't work. So anxiety was amplified, depression was deepened, and I decided to take my life and made a very clear plan to take my life, walked into a bank, and I wanted justification for what I wanted to do. And I slid the check across the counter, and there was a memo on the check that said what I had done and what I was being compensated for. And I wanted that teller to look at me and say, you are your filth. You are you're disgusting. And I wanted her to like grimace, shake her head, do something to solidify how I saw myself. And instead, she looked me in the eyes and said, "Joshua, are you okay? Like, Joshua, how can I help you?" Because she saw this like broken kid.
So you walked into an actual bank.
Yeah.
You wrote down something on a check.
Well, so on the memo, just like if
Yeah.
if you were compensated for speaking somewhere, it said honorarium for X, Y, and Z for tax purposes. But like in that industry, they would write something antagonistic to
I see.
belittle you because the industry is built.
Weird.
Well, the industry is built on manipulation and coercion. If you feel like you're less than, more often than not, you'll equate your worth with selling yourself in that way. And if you believe that that's the only thing that you can say yes to, there's nothing you can say no to, and your no loses its validity. So you just say yes to any and everything.
Wow.
You've already decided you're going to take your life.
Yeah.
You walk into the bank, you're cashing a check.
Yeah.
And that woman looks at you and says,
Yeah. So to provide some context, so in that industry, you don't go by your real name; you go by a pseudonym, and that in itself should point to the shame that's associated with it. Because when I got into the industry, this agent that was propositioning me to do these films, he was like, "Hey, how did you grow up? Why are you in LA? What do you hope to accomplish?" And I was like, grew up just me and my mom. So red flag or green flag for him comes from a broken home. You're in LA trying to be in this creative space like most people. And then I said I wanted to be famous. And I think what's so interesting about that is when you say that you want to obtain something that doesn't have a metric that's real, it's vague. And when you feel like you obtained the thing that you thought would make you feel some sort of way, and there's no way of truly obtaining that, because like, what is famous? Like, how many
Right.
followers do you need to feel like you're famous? How many people need to know your name that you're famous? And being rich is the same thing. It's like, if you think, well, if I make X amount of dollars, I'll feel a certain way about myself. It just doesn't work. So you just want more and more.
Yeah, there's no end. Literally, there's zero end ever.
Yeah. So I say that to say, the beauty of accountability is like, if Caleb said to me, "Hey man, I heard you talking to your wife in a way that was kind of out of bounds. That doesn't line up with your character. Are you doing all right?" And I could react in two different ways. I could be like, "Man, I haven't got a lot of sleep. We got a newborn. I'm frustrated, and you're right. I should not have spoke to her that way. Thank you so much for telling me that. I need to, figure out how to rest or really sort some stuff out." Or I could say, "Bro, don't tell me how to talk to her," and I could push you away, and it disconnects the opportunity for you to speak into my life. And what I had done is I had removed any and everyone from my life that is either challenging the things that I was doing or loved me enough to tell me the truth.
Wow.
So I hadn't heard my name in over a year. So this bank teller says, "Joshua, are you okay?" Literally, that's the first time I heard my name in a year.
I have chills.
And it's like, and then like when I heard my name, it's almost like I snapped out of this like plausible reality that I created based on shame. And I was numb to any and everything. And all of a sudden I felt, man, I'm in this moment. This is real. And, I almost like reverted back to being a little kid because I ran home and I cried and I called my mom,
How old are you at this point?
29,
And how many years were you into the
a little over 6 years.
A little over 6 years? And this is the first time you talked to your mom in a while?
Yeah, about a year.
Wow.
Because she had never stopped pursuing me. She was calling, texting me relentlessly, and I believed the lie. And a lot of people that struggle with their mental health, they go down the same path where they believe that their worth is minimal and there's something wrong with me. And often, especially with like teen and young adults, you see that they believe that their worth doesn't equate with the metric that they see on social media. So it's like, what do I have to offer? Like, what capabilities do I have? What kind of gifts and talents do I have? Because other people are doing all this stuff and I can't meet that bar. I can't do that. I'm not worth much, so I don't feel like I'm much. And then what happens is, as the enemy speaks to you, you believe, I'm not good enough, which turns into I'm not worth much. So I believe I'm going to disconnect myself from you because I don't have anything to offer you. So even though you're reaching out to me, I'm gonna push you away because I think it's best for you.
Wow.
And I believe that. Well, even though my mom's continuing to reach out to me, I don't have the ability to be a good son. She doesn't really want me in her life, even though she's saying these things. She's saying those things because she has to. And she doesn't really mean those things. And if she loves me, it's just because she's my mom. She doesn't love me because of who I am, because I'm not worth anything. So I think it's best for me. I'm doing her a favor if I distance myself from her. So this is where I've like put myself in. And then I hear, "Hey, are you okay? Joshua, are you okay?" And then I run home and call my mom.
Gosh, that's like God calling you by name. Like, Josh,
100%.
come home.
And Joshua means Yahweh is salvation.
Wow, that's so cool.
With spring cleaning being here, I recently went through my house and got rid of a ton of stuff like the old bathroom products and clothing that I don't use anymore, and I donated them. And I even went through my kitchen. I had so many old pots and pans that were just not it anymore and had toxins in them. And so Caleb and I have recently been using Caraway, and they are non-toxic cookware. And it's so amazing because not only do they eliminate any toxic materials like PFAs, PTFEs, PFOAs, or any other hard to pronounce chemicals, they also are beautiful and add a really nice aesthetic to your kitchen. I got the gold and white ones, and they just look so good in my kitchen. Also, they have easy cooking features. So they are ceramic, which means their slick surfaces means minimal oil or butter, so that anything you're cooking can slide off easy as well as clean easy. And over 65,000 people have rated them 5 stars because they're that amazing. So it is time to try it for yourself. Just as a reminder for you guys, their iconic cookware set comes with the saute pan, fry pan, Dutch oven, and saucepan, plus lids for all of them, and a canvas lid holder and a magnetic pan rack for storage. You guys, it's really, really cool. It's the ultimate kitchen setup and will save you $150 versus buying the items individually. Plus, if you visit carawayhome.com/healthy, you can take an additional 10% off your next purchase. This deal is exclusive for my listeners. So visit carawayhome.com/healthy or use code HEALTHY at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. And this is something Caleb and I are very big on, is health and making sure that we are not putting extra harmful chemicals in our bodies. So you guys, check it out. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and I have a question for you guys today. So tell me, how is your social battery right now? You could be drained or bursting with energy or ready to get out there or just wanting to be with your blanket and Netflix. So I think this can happen because we don't have enough boundaries, or we're just feeling less social with work, or feeling overwhelmed, or we're feeling just tired. And it can be very easy to ignore our social batteries and spread ourselves thin, especially with all the social gatherings coming up in the summertime. So what is the right amount of socializing for you, and how do you recharge? Maybe you thrive around people, or maybe you need more alone time. And therapy can really give you the self-awareness to build a social life that doesn't drain your battery. I have done therapy many times in my life. I have never been one to stray away from it and see down upon it. And I really think it is super beneficial. It could be very helpful if you're learning to have positive coping skills or set boundaries, or it just truly can empower you to be the best version of yourself. And so if you guys are thinking about starting therapy, definitely give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I really think this would be super beneficial for you guys if you're really just trying to learn more about yourself. So find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/happyhealthy today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/happyhealthy. And I really think this is going to bless you guys.
I have a question, because you mentioned a lot, like, I was believing a lie, I was believing a lie. Like, if you could summarize, like, what was that lie that you were believing that led you to make the decisions? Like, it sounds like there's a multitude of things, but like, you could break that down. What was that lie?
Yeah, I'm not enough. I'm not enough, so I have to do something outside of myself to become something I'm not.
Wow. What would you say? Because I mean, there's so many people in this industry. What would you say the main lie is that these people are believing? Would you say it's that same thing? Is it other lies? Like, what gets someone into this industry?
Yeah, I would say it's a byproduct of an identity crisis, because, you know, when you know who you are, because of whose you are, it doesn't matter who you are not. Like, when you know who if you know who you are, it doesn't matter who you are not. And I think if you don't know who you are, often you'll believe, well, I'm not deserving of love. And, you know, that's the beauty of emotions, because, like, all emotions are God-given, but the places that emotions take us, if they're not in surrender and submission to the person of Jesus, they lead us to destruction. Yeah. That's why your heart and your feelings are fickle. You know, Jeremiah 17 talks about your heart's deceitful and wicked among all things. Who can trust it? And I think if we allow the way that we feel based on what we don't have to lead us to fix our own problems, we're back in the garden creating our own autonomy. It's like I feel like I know what's best for me and I can fix my life. So I think if your identity is built on I don't have what I need, so there must be something wrong with me. I'm desiring love, and I'm not good enough or I'm not lovable, so I'm just going to compromise so that I obtain the feeling of I'm loved. Because if I'm honest, what I was searching for wasn't fame and fortune. It was the feeling of good job, son.
Wow.
Because that's the thing I didn't hear, and that's the thing that I needed to hear most. So if the way a counterfeit works, it makes you feel good for a moment, but it doesn't last.
Yeah. So you call your mom. How many years after do you have this come to Jesus moment where you find freedom from pornography and being
And leave the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I left the industry that day.
No
So,
way.
Go.
So I called my mom, and she said everything that I didn't think she would. And if anyone from the South or can relate with this, where it's like how much trouble you're in is how much of your name is used. So
Yeah.
she was like Joshua Luke Broome. She chewed me out because I hadn't called her. But then she said everything that I didn't think she was going to say. I love you. I miss you. Please come home.
Wow.
So I did.
You came home.
Yeah. And
Wow.
then, but unfortunately, I spent about 2 years. I always explain it as like I tried to put enough good dirt on my bad dirt so I didn't feel dirty. I tried to become good enough so the perception of others was that, well, maybe he's done bad things, but he's done enough good things to outweigh how they might see me. And I think, to keep it 100, it's like more people than not try to manage the perception of other people without dealing the things that are in
So
their
real.
hearts.
Right
It's
there.
like I would rather have a stranger's approval than actually deal with something that's in my soul.
That's
So,
so,
so
real.
what would you do? Like, what are those things you were doing for those couple years that?
Yeah, so I just started. I mean, same like different industry, same function. Where it's like I started working in the health and fitness industry. It's like, well, if I get enough accreditations, and I'm working at this strength and conditioning facility, and I get the person that's mentoring me is the strength conditioning coach for the Carolina Hurricanes, and he works with the Thor program at Fort Bragg, and he's pouring into me, and it's like I got the right mentor, and I go to all these classes and get all these credentials and do all this stuff and become like the best trainer and create like this online personal training program and do all this stuff. But it was, I'm in a different industry, but I'm functioning in the same way. I thought if I became good enough and I had enough success and people said, good job, or I got enough pats on the back, so I would feel as if I was good enough. And at the end of the day, what I brought with me was the mental and emotional trauma from living the life that I lived. And I tried to suppress it. And then my mental health was good for a season, but then it got really bad. And then this girl walks in the gym, and I'm like,
Hello.
what's up? It's like it was. So this is a CrossFit gym. So the nature is like we get out our own equipment, we put our own equipment away. This is our house. We take care of our house. And then I try to throw the little Southern charm on her. I was like, hey, I'll put your equipment away for you. I got you. And she's like, I'm good. I was like, dang. And then I asked her out on a date, and she's like, no, I think I'm okay. I was like, dang,
Rejected.
I'm in love.
Yes, literally.
Yeah, like instantly,
That's
I'm
what
in love with you.
I
You
did
don't
that to
get
him.
it.
It's okay.
I was like, man, it didn't deter me. It quickened my pursuit. But eventually, she agreed to go on this run with me, and this was Easter 9 years ago, and we meet to go on this run, and there was just something stirring in me. It's like I could almost hear my mom's voice saying, like, boy, don't you lie to that girl.
Yeah.
Don't you lie to her. Don't you hurt her. Because sometimes lying to someone's face will always hurt, but what will hurt more sometimes is withholding the truth from someone that you need to say. And I was like, man, I'm just going to tell her. And then I made it about me. I was like, well, I'll just tell her that way. Like, she's already not going to want to do anything with me when she finds out anyway. So I'll just tell her on the front end and just like, we'll just squash it. I'll go home and it'll be great. So I was just, I gave her this like 5-minute monologue. I was like, hey, this is how bad I am.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, she was like, are you still doing that stuff? And I was like, no, I haven't been doing anything in, like that, or haven't been involved with that industry for about 2 years. And then she was like, you could tell that she was like really thinking, and then she got real serious. And she was like, well, a person's not defined by the worst thing they've ever done.
Wow.
And a person's not defined by the greatest thing they'll ever do. There's a God that exists outside of time, space, and matter, and he created everything, including me and you. Do you know him? And I was like, maybe.
Wow.
Because I grew up going to church for a season, but I believe that my relationship with God was contingent on my acknowledgement that he existed, and that was pretty much it. And, she was quick to let me know that she was a follower of Jesus Christ, and it was a relationship that she had with Jesus was the foundation in which she lived her life. She's like, I'm not perfect, but my relationship with Jesus is the most important thing about my life. So what kind of food do you like? What kind of goals do you have? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, squat 500 and run a 5-minute mile. Like, I don't know. But she was just really pressed.
You were just
in.
a bro.
Yeah. I mean, but that's all I knew. And but she was asking me these deep questions I just didn't have the answer to.
Yeah.
And she cultivated this curiosity in me, and then she invited me to church the next week, and went to church and heard the gospel, and it wrecked me to oblivion, and gave my life to Jesus. And that girl that I went on that walk with, her name's Hope, and that's my wife.
That's who I saw you texting earlier.
Let's go, Hope.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What a story.
Yeah.
I just want to say, so I'm wanting to rewind because I heard in your story that a lot of the reason why you were making these decisions was because of isolation.
Oh, 100%.
And that's what the enemy does. He
Yeah.
always pushes you into isolation. And the Bible says, like, the man who breaks out of sound judgment is the one that makes like poor decisions. Like, that's in isolation. And so it's crazy how that's a reoccurring theme that the enemy will either shame you into isolation. Oh, no one can know what I'm doing. I'm so embarrassed. Or I don't want anyone's advice. Like, let me just do what I want to do. And it's crazy when Hope asks you those questions. I bet you hadn't been asked those in a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly not. I mean, and if anyone would have asked me those questions, I probably distanced myself from that relationship. And what you're talking about is so important. So it's like you look at isolation and solitude, and like isolation is I'm hiding from the world, but solitude is I'm preparing for the world, and isolation is I'm alone, but solitude is I'm alone with God. And you see Jesus, every time he was about to do something, he was in prayer before, and he was in prayer afterwards, and he sought solitude with God, spending time with God, preparing for the things of God. And it's like, man, isolation, it's born out of shame, where like you see in the garden, it's like Adam and Eve sin, and then they're hiding from God, and they're covering up. And I think we spend so much time covering up and hiding that we never step into what God has for us.
Gosh, amen. I actually talked about that in my book, same thing, because it's so, so true. Isolation pulls you away from anything good and godly, and solitude pushes you back to God, and where you get restored and refueled.
Yeah, and it's funny because like isolation is like a byproduct of fear, and solitude is actually a discipline born out of obedience.
So good. I wanted to ask you though really fast, because as we know, like, sin has consequences.
Yeah.
And yes, the Lord can heal anything, redeem anything, restore anything, but there are consequences for our actions.
Certainly.
And so what was kind of like the hangover for you getting out of that, trying to date again, being in this now godly relationship? Like, what did that process look like of getting rid of the old habits and now trying to date God's way?
Yeah. So for me, like, Jesus saved my life, but the Bible changed my life. And I think I just have a really unique story because, like, when I was dating Hope, she was like, I'm in it to win it, but that's not an option. Like, I've got clear boundaries. Like, you're not, we're not going into a room that's with a door closed. Like, we're not hanging out solo. Like, we're not doing things. And for me, like, if I'm honest, like, I was super awkward because all I knew was Netflix and chill. Like, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, how do I communicate with someone of the opposite sex in this way? Like, how do I, like, figure this out? And if I'm honest, like, I was pretty awkward, and luckily she showed me a lot of grace. because it wasn't because I didn't want to, because it wasn't an option. And I think like that's why like taking inventory of your life, like what you allow into your life, who speaks into your life is so important, because who you surround yourself is going to be often indicative of the decisions that you make. So, and just like the person that was discipling me, where it's like I gave my life to Christ, and then 3 days after that I go to this church and I'm like, hey, I've got this story that I want to tell, but I know that I need to understand the Bible to tell it. And I start, spending time with this guy, Andrew, and he's discipling me. And not only was he teaching me how to read and study the Bible, but every Friday we had these conversations where we would download, and he wouldn't just ask me like, hey, are you doing the right things? What's your thought life like? Because it's, like, yeah, I know, like, 2 Corinthians 10:5, like, take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. But, like, the practicality of that, it's like, I feel a lustful thought, and then I'm angry with myself and frustrated that I'm still having these thoughts. What am I supposed to do? And it's like I had to, like, take radical steps of obedience to find freedom from the things that I wanted to do. We even with a redeemed heart, there's this, like, crazy dichotomy, because like Jeremiah 17 talks about your heart's deceitful and wicked among all things, and Ezekiel talks about like you're going to get this heart of flesh, and the heart of stone is going to be replaced. But then you still got Romans 7 talking about, why do I do the things I don't want to do, and I struggle with the things I want to do. And it's because Ephesians 6, there's an enemy that wants to destroy you, and your flesh still has an inclination to do things you ought not do. So I have to say yes to God, no to something else. And then Titus 2 talks about, well, the fruit of saying no to ungodliness is you start to develop an appetite for righteousness, but that takes time. So for me, it was like counseling plus discipleship plus someone who was for me, but like defiant against sin.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I'm for you, but this relationship is going to look like this. And I think there was one of these memorial stones in my life where we were like, this is like further down the road. So like this was Easter when we had that walk. I proposed in October, so like pretty quick. And I remember we were in premarital, like we're doing these like premarital classes like at our church, and we're going through the 5 love languages. And most people have an inclination to love their significant other the way that they receive love. Like that's our natural response. And her primary love language was quality time. And I was like, okay, great. Quality movie, quality dinner, and she's like, no, the greatest gift that you can give me, the greatest present that you could give me is your presence.
Wow.
And I had a really hard time with that because I didn't really feel like I was worth anything. So you're telling me that the most extravagant thing that I can give you is me. The most, meaningful thing that I can give you is myself. I don't really see myself as worth that. And like her love for God shined through her and allowed me to love myself.
Wow.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Like, you're gonna get me all teary.
You know what I like? You know what I liked about?
I've got 2 more things that I need to share, but but you go.
No, I want to hear those 2 things. What I liked about what you said, because you answered my question. I was about to ask, what habits did you practice? Because you left the porn industry, you meet Hope. I assume there was still some addiction there.
Oh, sure. Like for me, like I had to go like cold turkey. So like no technology in my bedroom or bathroom whatsoever. Like for me, like I go 100 on everything. So it's like chicken wing contest. Like you're not beating me. I'm dying.
I'll beat you, bro.
You know what I'm saying? Like
after this, we're going to Pluckers.
This is just who I am. It's like I'm gonna die to try to win. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna follow Jesus. Well, watch this.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna be a disciple.
Like literally, like removing doors like from my bedroom. Like no. And it's like I had to go like crazy. So I even like bought like a loofah on a stick, and I didn't like touch myself for a year.
Wow.
Let's go.
But it's like I knew that I had like my flesh was weak.
Yeah.
So I was like, I've got to take drastic measures because I've lived in a drastic like sin pattern for a long time. So for me to break that pattern, I've got to do something, because like for some people it's like, hey, if you are a someone who is severely obese and you're diabetic, it's probably not a good idea for you to incorporate like a few Oreos into your diet. Well, it's like if you've got this equity built up, like regarding your health, like maybe you can incorporate like something because you've got some discipline there. But if there's no discipline there, like don't tempt yourself beyond your ability to be obedient.
Yeah,
You know?
it's real. So, okay, so this is, I mean, pornography is a part of both of our stories. I was exposed at a very young age as well, messed me up for a couple years. I mean, same thing with you. And
I was older. I was sheltered.
we were both homeschooled. So, like, when I got a hold of it, I mean, it was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, it was, my parents never gave me the birds and bees talk. I'm kind of mad about that now because I had to find out the hard way. But we wanted to read some statistics because this is running rampant in our culture. And as you were saying, like kids are getting exposed to it even earlier on social media. And like you can Google anything and it pops up. So I want to know, what can we do about this? But I want you
I
to
also want
read-
to know, I remember you said you had 2 thoughts. I want you to hit those. Do you want to hit those 2 thoughts now or do you want to hit them later?
Let's talk
Okay.
about
read off these
Let's talk
statistics.
data.
These are pretty staggering. I'm
Okay.
not going to lie.
As of 2020, about 71% of American internet users aged 18 to 29 have watched porn at least once. 28.5 billion annual visits were recorded, and the popular adult site XYZ, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, we don't like this site.
The website in 2019, 25% of all search engine requests are pornography related. 25%.
That's crazy.
Worldwide, I'm having trouble with my words today,
Pornography
is a $97 billion industry.
Yeah, and that's just in the U.S. So you got like pornography as a whole makes more money than the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball all combined. If you're not a sports person, Disney, Netflix makes more money than those two industries combined, short a few billion. 33% worldwide of internet usage, 33% is pornography. Out of the top 10 sites that exist, 2 of those sites, I'm talking worldwide, of the most searched websites on Earth, 2 of the websites are pornography.
Are you like in danger with like, this is a very, very wealthy industry, and you were one of the biggest people in this industry, and now you're speaking against it. Like, are you safe? Like, because
Do we need security cards?
is that scary? Because I'm sure you're an enemy to them now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like I'm an enemy to them, but I would say they see themselves with a level of superiority because like the amount of monetary gain on a daily basis. I mean, just think about this. Our great state of Texas implements age verification, which I had the joy and honor of speaking at Capitol Hill and advocating
No
for this a
way.
few years ago. Yeah, there we go. And so see this come to fruition, and then they sue Pornhub, and Pornhub loses, and they don't blink. Because if quote unquote site, if they lose $20 million, that's like me losing 5 cents. Yeah. So I would say, am I safe? I think so. But I mean, if I'm not, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, what I was going to ask is, I mean, there's some crazy statistics here.
Yeah.
What is the enemy doing with pornography to people? Like, why is this such a thing, and what is it doing to us?
There's just so many terrible things that's attached. Really, like 94% of all pornography has violence in it. So, of course, it's contributing to that violence being acted out in real life. It contributes to rape culture. It contributes to human trafficking. It contributes to sex trafficking. And I would say, as crazy as the data around sex trafficking, what is even more like gut-wrenching is that you look at so Heidi Olson is a good friend of mine. She's a critical care nurse in outside of like St. Louis, Missouri, and she is the examiner for kids that get sexually assaulted. And in the United States, around 60% of the kids that are 15 and younger that get sexually assaulted, the perpetrator is on average 11 to 15 years old. So what that means is there's kids in their home watching the most popular niche, which is incest, that are developing these thought patterns and acting out in a real way these desires that are being cultivated. So we don't hear this because they're trying to protect the kid that's doing it because they're traumatized as well. But I mean, 60% of cases that happen in America. That's the scenario. In Australia, it's around 80%. So in a real way, those kids are watching porn. They're developing these desires, and they're acting out on them. And you look at things like a popular niche is teen porn, but they're dressing these girls up in stockings and pigtails, and that's not depicting a teen. That's depicting a child. So, I mean, in a real way, yes, they are clearly creating these desires for these terrible things, and it's blatantly obvious if you look on the outside looking in, but when you're in the middle of it, you don't even see that you're being destroyed.
Gosh. Y'all, this is a heavier episode.
Yeah.
It's real. I mean, this is real, and
Yeah.
like nobody wants.
They're
to
probably
talk
going
about
to
it.
demonetize this too.
Yeah,
you know?
they can demonetize me all they want. We
Yeah.
need to get this message out for real. I think another thing that I've seen as being a female is the message that only guys struggle with this, and this is just a guy struggle. And now I think it's becoming more open and honest that women struggle with this too.
Yeah.
How have you also seen this damage the women that you worked with, or
Yeah.
have you spoken to any of them? Like, what does that look like now for them?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, what's true about that is, so I've been out of the industry for 11 years, and 33 people that I was in the industry with that are around the same age as me, they're dead. They've either committed suicide or died of overdose. 33 people that I know personally, that I've sat with and broke bread with and know real, nuances of their life. That's true for 33 people. 500 people in the last 25 years have died of either murder, suicide, or overdose, and it's because the same reason I stayed in the industry. If you believe that, my life is, it equates to me selling myself in that way, and that's my only value, then you continue to live your life that way, and then all of a sudden when the phone stops ringing, you think, well, what else can I do? And you've been told by everyone around you, because that industry is built on manipulation, that this is who you are, you'll never be able to do this, and being reminded, hey, the things that you're most ashamed of, they're tangibly found on the internet. And they're one click away. So who's going to date you? Who's going to take you seriously? Is anyone going to hire you? Do you have a resume? Of course not. You have to continue to do what you're doing, and you're going to be willing to do whatever I tell you to do. So when they're, manipulated to do like escorting or, whatever on the side, they're just going to say yes to it because they feel like they can't say no to anything. And then all of a sudden their phone stops ringing, and it's like, well, this is who I am. This is not what I've done. Like, this is who I am. And no one wants me, and I don't have any worth, so what is the point? So either you discover the hope that's found in Christ, or you try to save yourself. And these girls that are taking their life, they leave the industry because they just can't take it anymore, and they're either addicted to drugs because they're trying to medicate the pain, or they try to, live their life, and the world loves to call you by your sin.
Yeah.
So they're trying to do something for themselves, and they believe, they are what they did. And more often than not, the people around them are reminding them of what they did, and they try to do something, and they don't believe they can, or they don't know how, and they end up in this hopeless cycle, and that leads to death. And I think that's like the beauty of someone discovering hope. And like the thing that I was going to say, I wanted to go on a tangent on, is like, when people are coming out of OnlyFans and they are on Michael Knowles, and the people are like, why are you giving this person a platform? Like, are you serious? The industry that is contributing to 50% of the divorces in America, that are leading to kids growing up fatherless, which is contributing to, crime, which is contributing to like a multitude of things, like the most profitable organization that manipulates kids and destroys women's lives. Like, they're coming out of that saying, I found hope. Like, I want to tell everybody, and you're saying, why would you give that person a platform? Well, I would say there's no one else better to sit in that seat.
Amen.
Because that was me.
Wow.
And my story is different because God kept me in the dark for a while, because I didn't do a podcast or stand on a stage for 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, God kept me in the dark. It's like, but I think in a way, like God allowed me to stay in the dark and to heal and to prepare and to get a theological education and to do all these things so that I could have a 1 Peter 3:15, so I could give an answer for the hope that I have and share with those people coming out of that industry, because I've talked to that girl and she said the reason that I believed that I could leave is because I saw your story.
Let's go.
And you did like, I'm doing the very thing that I thought was impossible. And it's like, man, I'm nobody, but I point to a miracle that happened in my life that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with Jesus. So yes, I will scream that from the rooftops.
That's what it's about. That is what it's about.
It sounds like, to sum it up, you're saying vulnerability equals freedom.
Yeah.
And that is like the first step to where, like you asked, like women who are hiding in sin with this addiction is like, okay, first step to finding freedom and healing is vulnerability.
Oh, 100%.
Just confession.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say that we're, even in the church. So, I mean, I'm called to the church in that there's, how does the 2.5 billion people reach the 5.5 lost? Well, you share the gospel, but are you going to share the gospel if you are crippled with shame? No.
Yeah.
And like the data says, 18 to 24, 90-ish% of guys see porn on a monthly basis, and 67% of girls see porn on a monthly basis. And if that's true, then you've got a crippled generation needing to do something that needs to be, that's not being done. And it's like that's what I'm most passionate about. And like, to your point, if you mention the thing that's unmentionable to you, what happens is there's freedom on the other side of confession, because there's a lot of people that experience the healing that, or the salvation that comes from confession, regarding John 1, where you've confessed your sin to God and you've been saved. But have you confessed your sin to someone else out loud? James 5:16, like, have you confessed to a friend so that you could be prayed by a righteous person, so there can be healing happen in your life? Because when you mention the thing that is holding you hostage, all of a sudden that thing doesn't own you anymore. You own it, because you have surrendered it into submission to what Jesus has done on the cross.
Y'all, Caleb is in his cooking era. He has been cooking so much for me lately, and specifically, he's been cooking steak from Good Ranchers. And let me tell you, it is so good, y'all. As we speak, he is currently making a nice tenderloin, and I can't wait to eat it after this. Good Ranchers is where I get 100% American meat I can trust, that's tender and full of flavor every time. With meat prices continuing to go up and quality at the store going down, Good Ranchers is doing a price lock guarantee currently. This is the only price lock on 100% American meat you can find, and you do not want to miss it. During their April Price Shield campaign, Good Ranchers is locking in your price until 2026 when you subscribe to any one of their full boxes of 100% American meat and seafood that they ship right to your door. Guys, Good Ranchers Price Shield will not only save you hundreds, but it will also help you put 100% American beef, chicken, pork, and wild-caught seafood on your plate that you can trust. I'm telling you guys, we've eaten this multiple times. It tastes so delicious, and you can trust it. So also, you can get an extra 10% off your subscription with my code HEALTHY at goodranchers.com today. And what I really love about Good Ranchers is their commitment to transparency, just like this show. They believe that you have the right to know exactly what's in your food. They're amazing supporters of the show. So by supporting them, you can take the mystery out of the meat and also support this podcast. This exclusive price shield offer ends with the month of April, so you do not want to miss it. Secure your best price until 2026 at goodranchers.com and use my code HEALTHY for 10% off your subscription and a price lock guarantee until 2026. Goodranchers.com, American meat delivered.
Where's the church gotten it wrong?
If there was something that you needed to know and I didn't tell you, and then you found out from the world and it was wrong, but that's where you heard it first, who are you going to believe when I come to you and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong? Well, everyone around me is doing this. This is normative in the world. Because I just love. It's a children's book, but it's called Good Book, Bad Pictures. Sorry, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It's put out by a ministry called Defend Young Minds, and it's geared towards 5 to 7 year olds. But the overarching theme of the book is there's bad things in this world that you probably will see at some point, And if you see them, that doesn't make you bad. And in the same way, if you are hurt, you run to mom and dad. If you're scared, you run to mom and dad. If you see something that you know you shouldn't have seen, don't be ashamed. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't feel dirty. You're not. Come to mom and dad and let's talk about it and process it, because where we've got it wrong is by not talking about sex, because sex is beautiful and it's this thing that, God has created to exist between one man and one woman in one marriage for one lifetime. That's beautiful, that creates intimacy, that shapes you as a person and grows you closer to God. And it's this beautiful thing. But if it's, if you see it outside of the context of what it actually is, it's really destructive.
Right.
And if I don't know something to be true and I withhold that from people that I love, I have to answer 2 questions. If it was so important, why didn't you tell me? And why is what you're telling me different than what I heard first?
Wow. I mean, it's so true. When you're not having these conversations, people are just staying in their shame and their guilt, and they think I'm so alone. And it's the same thing that the enemy does every single time. That was my story. I mean, I literally thought as a 12-year-old, like, I'm the only girl in the world that struggles with it. And to come to find out, the more that I've spoken up about it, I've shared my story, so many women DM me like, oh my gosh, thank you, because finally they feel less alone. And so it's so important for the church to speak about it, for podcast leaders, everyone to speak about it, because then the enemy loses his grip. And the more people that talk about it, the less that he has a hold on everybody. And so...
Yeah, like to your point, like I love the language that vulnerability is always the bridge to connectivity. And it's like, hey, I'm not perfect, and maybe I have struggled, maybe I haven't struggled, but the truth is, it's not a normal thing to struggle with, but it is a normative problem in this world. And if you're struggling with that, you're not alone, because there's billions of people struggling with it. So just know that you're not alone. There's not something wrong with you, but there is something wrong with that, and it is contributing to you seeing yourself in a wrong way, and it is a detriment to your life. So I get the opportunity to do chapel for a few NFL teams and speak in different like secular places, and I always ask people, I'm like, hey, do you want all that you could be? Do you want more capacity? Do you want to become more? Do you want to do more? Do you want to be more effective in whatever facet or sphere that you have influence in? Well, porn is minimizing your worth. It's wasting your time. There's neuroscience around it. It creates, disconnection from your ability to have a long-term memory. It creates, these feelings, the dopamine hit in a way. It damages your synapse. So you end up being lethargic. You lack integrity. All these things. Wow. It's like you're making yourself ineffective. Yeah. So if you want to be the best version of yourself, you are putting something damaging in your heart and mind, and it's having a real impact on your life. So if you want more, you need to say no to that.
Man.
Okay, well,
I got to ask him that one question.
Which one?
The one about all the girls want to know.
I have so many questions.
All the girls want to know.
Wait, can I ask one more before that? Yeah. Okay, so before we move on to that, I guess what would you say to the person right now that is stuck in that sin? They feel hopeless, like I can't get out, I'm struggling with the shame. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say, hey, well, number one, if you are a follower of Jesus Christ, Romans 8:1 says, therefore there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And shame is not the voice of God saying there's something wrong with you. That's the voice of Satan saying there's something wrong with you, and I want to keep you trapped and stuck where you are. And that's what shame does. Like, shame isolates you, so you believe that you are what you did, so that you stay the way that you are. But I would say, hey, you're not alone, and there is freedom on the other side of telling someone. And the data says someone in your circle that you trust has struggled with or is struggling with something that you're struggling with too. Tell someone. And now if there's something that's leading me to trip over something, I need to remove the thing I'm tripping over. So before I can be obedient, I need to be self-aware. What's leading me to do the thing that I want to now remove from my life? I need to take inventory of my life. What am I listening to? What am I watching? Who is speaking into my life? And now I need to protect myself from myself. I tell people, you need to check yourself or you wreck yourself. You're like, I have a proclivity to do things I ought not do, so I need to protect myself. What kind of boundaries am I putting in place in my life, and who is holding me accountable to me saying, am I doing the things that I'm saying I want to do?
That's so good. And I also think too, checking, sometimes I think there's an emotion behind it. You know, people are either bored or lonely or like wanting to feel some sort of feeling, and we're chasing a feeling by doing that. And so taking note of that as well.
Yeah, 100%. Because porn is not the problem. Like porn is, I've medicated a wound or a lack in my life, and that medicine has become something that I lean on, and the root is actually, there's something that happened to me, there's something that I did, there's something I didn't have, and I felt some sort of way, and I didn't want to deal with that emotion, so I've suppressed it by consuming that content, because maybe I was rejected, and I believe that porn will never reject me, or I was wanting to be loved, and maybe this made me feel like I was obtaining love, or whatever it might be. It's always a medication for a wound that has nothing to do with that. And yes, there's this habitual nature of that, but the root problem is where, we need to address. And I think that's why it's so complicated as a church, because there's no system, because it's an individualistic problem. Like, what happened to you?